You're at the donut shop. The morning light catches those perfect glazed donuts behind the glass. Golden, puffy, still warm. You pick one up. It's impossibly light in your hand. You take a bite, and it practically melts. Sweet glaze, soft interior. That slight chew from the fried exterior. But here's something that might surprise you. That donut you just bit into? It took either 3 hours of careful work or 90 seconds on an assembly line. Most donut shops use one of two completely different processes. One relies on time, temperature, and yeast. The other skips all that with chemicals and speed. And the reason you can't always tell the difference? Both methods create something round, fried, and sweet enough to fool you. How does flour and water become a donut? What's happening during those hours of waiting? And why does the fast version work at all? Let's explore the process. Donuts aren't new. Dutch settlers brought oliekoeks, oily cakes, to America in the 1600s. Fried balls of sweetened dough. The ring shape came later. In 1847, ship captain Hanson Gregory punched a hole through the center so the dough would cook evenly. The outside was burning while the inside stayed raw. That hole solved everything, even frying. No raw center. And it became the iconic shape we recognize. So, how do you make a donut? Let's start with the traditional method, the one that relies on time. The dough begins with flour, all-purpose or bread flour, high in protein. Then comes yeast, active dry yeast mixed with warm water and a bit of sugar. The sugar feeds the yeast. The yeast wakes up. To this, you add more sugar, eggs, butter, salt, and milk. The eggs add richness and structure. The butter makes it tender. The milk adds moisture. This all gets mixed until it forms a shaggy dough. Then comes kneading. You work the dough for 8 to 10 minutes until it becomes smooth and elastic. Kneading develops gluten. Gluten creates structure. Structure is what makes the donut hold its shape when fried. Now comes the critical part, proofing. The dough goes into a bowl, covered, and sits at room temperature for 1 to 2 hours. During this time, the yeast eats the sugar and produces carbon dioxide. Those gas bubbles get trapped in the gluten network. The dough doubles in size. This is what makes donuts light and fluffy. Without proofing, you'd have dense fried bread. After the first rise, the dough gets rolled out to about half an inch thick. Then you cut it. A round cutter for the outer circle. A smaller cutter for the center hole. The classic ring shape. The cut donuts go onto trays for a second proof. Another 30 to 45 minutes. They puff up again. This second rise is essential. It creates air pockets that make donuts tender instead of tough. Here's the thing. You can't rush this. Yeast works on its own schedule. Some artisan makers do a cold fermentation overnight. The dough sits in the fridge for 12 to 24 hours. This develops more complex flavors, but it takes patience. Now comes frying. Oil heated to 190 degrees Celsius. That's the sweet spot. Too cold, and the donuts absorb oil and turn greasy. Too hot, and they burn on the outside while staying raw inside. The donuts go into the oil, they sink briefly, then float. You fry one side for about 90 seconds. Flip them. Fry the other side for another 90 seconds. As they fry, the moisture inside turns to steam. The steam pushes outward, creating more air pockets. The outside gets crispy and golden. The inside stays soft. When they come out, they're plain. Just fried dough. They cool for a minute or two. Then comes the glaze. Traditional glaze is simple. Powdered sugar, milk, a bit of butter. Vanilla. The glaze should be thin enough to drip, but thick enough to coat. You dip the warm doughnut into the glaze. Let the excess drip off. Place it on a rack. As the doughnut cools, the glaze sets. You're left with that signature glossy coating. That's a traditional doughnut. Flour, yeast, time, heat. 3 hours from mixing to glazing. Now here's the kicker. Factory doughnuts? They skip almost all of that. Instead of yeast, industrial makers use chemical leaveners, baking powder, baking soda. These create gas bubbles instantly when mixed with liquid. No waiting, no proofing. The dough is mixed, shaped, and fried within minutes. Some factories produce doughnuts on a conveyor belt. Dough goes in one end. Fried glazed doughnuts come out the other. Total time? 3 minutes from batter to box. The texture is different. Chemical leavened doughnuts are denser. They don't have that airy yeast-risen quality. But they're consistent. Every single one identical. And they can be made on demand without waiting for dough to rise. Some chains use a hybrid method. They make yeast dough in a central facility, freeze it, then ship it to stores. The stores proof and fry on-site. This gives the benefit of yeast flavor without every location mixing dough from scratch. But wait, even within the traditional method, there are variations. Cake doughnuts use baking powder. Raised doughnuts use yeast. Crullers are made from choux pastry, the same dough used for eclairs. Filled doughnuts get injected with jam or cream after frying. Each type requires different handling, but the core process stays the same. Mix, shape, fry, glaze. So let's go back to that doughnut shop. You're looking at that perfect glazed doughnut through the glass. But now you know it took either 3 hours of proofing or 3 minutes on a chemical assembly line. You know, real doughnuts rely on yeast-eating sugar and producing carbon dioxide over hours. You know the frying happens at 190 degrees Celsius for 90 seconds per side. You know the glaze is just powdered sugar and milk applied while warm. The next time you bite into a doughnut, you'll taste the difference. You'll know if it's light and airy from slow fermentation or dense and cake-like from baking powder. You'll taste whether someone waited 3 hours or rushed it in 3 minutes. That's the process. We reveal how things actually work, one story at a time. If there's something you'd like us to explore next, let us know. Until then, trust the process.